You think you know what a wedding disaster looks like? A drunk uncle? A red wine stain on a white dress? Try standing at the altar of the Pierre Hotel, facing 500 of New York's most ruthless elite, and projecting your mother-in-law's wire transfer receipts to your husband's mistress on a 20-foot LED screen. Everyone thought Sienna Kinsley was just the lucky new money charity case marrying into the sterling billionaire dynasty. They thought she was naive. They were wrong. When the lights went down for the couple's slideshow, the screams started. But it wasn't the exposure of the affair that broke the internet. It was the 3 words the groom whispered into the microphone when the dust finally settled. The air inside the bridal suite at the Pierre smelled of expensive lilies and passive aggression. Sienna Kinsley sat before the vanity, staring at her reflection. Her makeup artist, a sweet girl named Chloe, was trembling slightly as she applied the final touches of mascara. It wasn't Sienna making her nervous. It was the woman standing behind them, reflected in the mirror like a hawk watching a field mouse. Victoria Sterling, the matriarch, the woman who controlled the Sterling shipping empire with a manicured iron fist. "Too much blush," Victoria said, her voice sounding like crushing glass. She didn't look at Sienna. She looked at Chloe. "She looks flushed, like a milkmaid. My son is marrying a Sterling, not a farmhand. Fix it." Sienna didn't blink. 2 months ago, that comment would have made her cry. 1 month ago, it would have made her scream. Today, Sienna just watched the older woman's reflection with a terrifying calmness. "It's fine, Chloe," Sienna said softly. "Leave it." Victoria stepped closer, the silk of her midnight blue dress rustling. "Excuse me? You do realize who is paying for this circus, don't you, Sienna? The least you can do is look the part of a billionaire's wife, rather than whatever this is." She gestured vaguely at Sienna's face. "I'm ready, Victoria," Sienna said, standing up. The dress, a custom Vera Wang that cost more than Sienna's college tuition, fell perfectly around her. "Is Harrison ready?" "Harrison is handling business," Victoria snapped, "as he always will be. You'd do well to learn your place now. You are the ornament. He is the engine. Don't distract him." There was a knock at the heavy oak door. It opened to reveal the wedding planner, a frantic woman named Beatrice, who looked like she hadn't slept in 2012. "Mrs. Sterling," Beatrice said, breathless. "We have a situation with the seating chart. A guest has arrived who wasn't on the final list, but she claims she has a personal invitation from you." Victoria's eyes flickered. A tiny, imperceptible smile touched her lips. "Oh? Who is it?" "A Miss Chantel Dubois." Sienna felt her heart stop, then restart with a heavy, thudding rhythm. "Chantel. Ah, yes," Victoria said smoothly, adjusting her diamond tennis bracelet. "Chantel. She's an old family friend. Make room for her at table 1, right next to the family." Table 1, the head table. Beatrice looked pale. "Mrs. Sterling, table 1 is for the bride and groom's immediate parents and siblings only. If I put Miss Dubois there—" "Do as I say," Victoria hissed. Sienna turned slowly. "Chantel Dubois? Harrison's ex-girlfriend? You invited her, and you're putting her at the head table?" Victoria smirked. It was the first time she had looked genuinely happy all day. "She's not just an ex, darling. She's a business partner's daughter. It's politics. You wouldn't understand. Besides, Chantel has class. She knows how to navigate our world. I thought having her close by might inspire you." Sienna looked down at her engagement ring, a 6-carat emerald-cut diamond that felt heavier by the second. "Does Harrison know?" "Harrison does what is best for the family," Victoria said. "Finish up. You have 10 minutes before the procession. Don't trip." Victoria swept out of the room, leaving a vacuum of tension behind her. Chloe, the makeup artist, whispered, "I can't believe she did that. Table 1? That's insane." Sienna walked to the window, looking down at Central Park. The leaves were turning brown. Winter was coming. "It's not insane, Chloe," Sienna whispered, reaching into a clutch bag hidden beneath the vanity. Her fingers brushed against the cold metal of a USB drive. "It's a power move. She's trying to show me that even on my wedding day, she owns him. She owns the room. She thinks she can humiliate me into submission." Sienna pulled the USB drive out and clenched it in her fist. "She has no idea what I'm about to do." To understand why Sienna wasn't crying in the bridal suite, you have to go back 3 weeks. It was a Tuesday. Sienna had come home early from her job at the art gallery. She and Harrison lived in a sprawling penthouse in Tribeca, a glass box in the sky that felt more like a museum than a home. Harrison was in the shower. His phone, usually glued to his hand, was sitting on the marble island in the kitchen. It buzzed. Then it buzzed again. Sienna wasn't the jealous type. Harrison Sterling was charming, attentive, and seemingly obsessed with her. He sent her flowers every Monday. He flew her to Paris for dinner. He was the Prince Charming every magazine said he was. But the phone kept buzzing. Sienna glanced at it. A notification from an unknown number. She bought the ticket. "I'll be in NY on the 14th. Can't wait to celebrate us properly." The 14th. Their wedding day. Sienna frowned. She didn't unlock the phone. She didn't know the passcode. But as she stood there, frozen, Harrison's suit jacket, draped over the bar stool, caught her eye. He had come from a lunch with his mother. Something was sticking out of the inner pocket, a folded piece of thick, cream-colored paper. Sienna pulled it out. It was a receipt, but not for lunch. It was a transaction confirmation from a private banking firm in the Cayman Islands. Beneficiary, Chantal Dubois. Amount, $5,000 USD. Sender, the Victoria Sterling Revocable Trust. Note, contract fulfillment. Phase 1. Sienna's hands began to shake. $5 million. Why was her future mother-in-law sending Harrison's ex-girlfriend $5 million 3 weeks before the wedding? She dug deeper into the pocket. There was another paper. This one was a letter. It wasn't in an envelope. It looked like it had been hastily shoved in, perhaps given to Harrison by his mother to read later. The stationery had the Sterling family crest. "Harrison, the prenup is watertight, as promised. Remember the timeline. You need to stay married to the Kinsley girl for exactly 18 months to unlock your grandfather's trust fund. Clause 4A. Marital stability requirement. Once the funds transfer hits the accounts, we initiate the separation. Chantal has agreed to wait. She understands the game. Be patient. The girl is dull, but she's manageable. Just keep playing the part of the doting fiancé. $5 million has been sent to Chantal as a retainer for her silence and patience. Do not mess this up. The company needs that liquidity. Mother." Sienna read the letter 3 times. The world didn't spin. It didn't blur. Instead, everything snapped into hyperfocus. The hum of the refrigerator sounded like a jet engine. The ticking of the clock was a hammer. Dull, manageable. 18 months. She wasn't a bride. She was a key. A human key to unlock a bank vault, to be discarded once the door was open. And Harrison, the man who held her when she cried, the man who proposed on a cliffside in Amalfi, he was in on it. Or was he? The shower stopped. Sienna panicked. She shoved the letter and the receipt back into the jacket pocket, exactly as she found them. She grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl and took a bite, forcing herself to lean casually against the counter as Harrison walked in, a towel wrapped around his waist. "Hey, beautiful. he said, smiling that dazzling billion-dollar smile. He kissed her forehead. He smelled of cedarwood and lies. "You're home early." "Slow day," Sienna said. Her voice sounded strange to her ears, hollow. "How was lunch with your mother?" Harrison stiffened slightly, just for a microsecond. If she hadn't known, she would have missed it. "Oh, you know, Mother. Intense. Lots of talk about table arrangements and floral budgets. Boring stuff." "Did she mention Chantel?" Sienna asked. Harrison turned away to open the fridge, grabbing a bottle of water. "Chantel? No, why would she? I haven't seen her in years." He lied. He lied so easily. "Just wondering," Sienna said. "I had a dream about her. Weird." "Don't worry about the past, Sienna," Harrison said, turning back and cupping her cheek. His eyes looked so sincere. "It's just us. Forever. Just us. For 18 months. Sienna smiled back. It was the hardest thing she had ever done. "Go get dressed. We have that dinner with the Davises tonight." As soon as Harrison left the room, Sienna dropped the apple. She didn't cry. The sadness had evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard rage. They thought she was dull? They thought she was manageable? They had made a critical error. Sienna wasn't just an art gallery assistant. Her father had been a forensic accountant before he passed. He had taught her one thing above all else: follow the paper trail. Over the next 3 weeks, Sienna didn't sleep. She investigated. She hired a private investigator named Reynolds, a gritty, ex-NYPD guy who hated rich people on principle. She gave him the names. She gave him the dates. Reynolds came back with gold. He found the text messages. He found the photos of Harrison and Chantel meeting at a hotel in Greenwich just 2 days after the lunch. He found the email drafts between Victoria and her lawyers drafting the divorce papers before the wedding had even happened. And he found the video, security footage from a restaurant where Victoria and Chantel were laughing, toasting with champagne, and mocking Sienna's choice of wedding dress. "She looks like a marshmallow in that Vera Wang," Chantel had said on the tape. "Enjoy it while she lasts," Victoria had replied. "You'll be the second Mrs. Sterling, the one that counts." Sienna compiled it all, every screenshot, every receipt, the video clips, the emails. She put it all on a USB drive. Back in the bridal suite, Sienna snapped back to the present. She looked at the door where Victoria had just exited. "Chloe," Sienna said, "do me a favor." "Anything," the makeup artist said. "Go find the AV technician, the guy running the slideshow for the reception. Tell him I have a surprise update for the montage, a love letter to my husband." Chloe smiled. "That's so sweet. I'll run it down right now." Sienna handed her the USB drive. "Tell him to play this exactly when I give the signal. The signal is when I tap the microphone 3 times. "Got it." As Chloe left, Sienna turned back to the mirror. The dull girl was gone. The manageable girl was dead. She stood up and walked toward the door. The wedding march was about to begin. It was time to walk down the aisle. It was time to burn the Sterling dynasty to the ground. The doors to the grand ballroom opened with a groan of heavy timber, and the music swelled. A live string quartet playing a haunting, slowed-down version of "Can't Help Falling in Love." Sienna stepped into the aisle. Usually, this is the moment a bride feels a rush of euphoria. She sees the faces of loved ones, the flowers, the man waiting at the end of the long runner. But Sienna didn't feel euphoria. She felt like a gladiator stepping into the Colosseum, armed not with a sword, but with a USB drive tucked into the bodice of her dress. The room was a sea of designer silk and old money. The air was thick with the scent of 5,000 white hydrangeas, imported from Holland that morning. As Sienna walked, she scanned the crowd. She saw the faces of New York's elite, senators, tech moguls, shipping magnates, people who could ruin a life with a single phone call. And then she saw her, sitting in the front row on the groom's side, directly next to Victoria Sterling, Chantelle Dubois. Sienna's breath hitched, but she forced her feet to keep moving. Left, right, left, right. Chantelle was not wearing a guest's dress. She was wearing a floor-length gown of pale, shimmering silver that looked dangerously close to white under the ballroom lights. It was backless, plunging, and screamed for attention. It was a declaration of war. As Sienna passed, Chantelle turned her head. She locked eyes with Sienna and offered a small, pitying smile. She mouthed 2 words. Lovely dress. It wasn't a compliment. It was a victory lap. Chantelle looked at Sienna the way a wolf looks at a sheep, something to be eaten and discarded. Sienna reached the altar. Harrison stepped down to take her hand. His palms were warm, dry, and steady. He looked devastatingly handsome in his bespoke Tom Ford tuxedo. "You look breathtaking," he whispered, his voice thick with what sounded like genuine emotion. For a second, Sienna wavered. Could it be a mistake? Could the receipt be wrong? Could the letter be a forgery? He looked at her with such adoration. Then she looked past his shoulder and saw Victoria. The matriarch was dabbing her dry eyes with a lace handkerchief, performing the role of the proud mother perfectly. But when Victoria caught Sienna's gaze, her eyes hardened into steel. She gave a microscopic nod as if to say, "Good girl, say your lines." The doubt vanished. The rage returned, colder than before. The officiant, a bishop who had baptized Harrison, began the ceremony. He droned on about sanctity, loyalty, and the divine bond of marriage. The irony was so thick it tasted metallic in Sienna's mouth. "Harrison," the bishop said, "do you take Sienna to be your lawfully wedded wife, to love and to cherish, in sickness and in health, as long as you both shall live?" Harrison squeezed Sienna's hands. He looked deep into her eyes. "I do." He didn't blink. He didn't flinch. He lied to God, to the bishop, and to her, without a single hesitation. "And do you, Sienna?" The bishop turned to her. "Take Harrison to be your lawfully wedded husband?" The room went silent. A second passed. Then 2. Sienna looked at Harrison. She saw the 18-month timeline ticking in his pupils. She saw the $5 million transfer behind his smile. She also knew that to destroy them properly, she needed to trap them. If she walked away now, it was just a breakup. If she married him and then exposed them, it was a scandal that would decimate the sterling stock price and humiliate Victoria on a global scale. She needed to be inside the fortress to blow it up. "I do," Sienna said. Her voice was clear, bell-like, and devoid of fear. "Then, by the power vested in me," the bishop announced, "I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Harrison leaned in. As his lips touched hers, the applause erupted. The guests cheered. Victoria clapped politely. Chantelle smirked, checking her nails. Harrison pulled back, beaming at the crowd. He raised their joined hands in triumph. "Enjoy it, Harrison," Sienna thought, forcing a radiant smile for the photographers. "It's the last time you'll ever hear applause." The transition from ceremony to reception was seamless, a testament to the $1 million budget. The guests were ushered into the main banquet hall, a cavernous space transformed into a winter garden with crystal chandeliers and ice sculptures. Sienna and Harrison sat at the center of the head table. To Sienna's right sat her quiet, overwhelmed aunt, her only family. To Harrison's left sat Victoria, and next to Victoria, in the seat reserved for the family friend, sat Chantelle. The seating arrangement was a deliberate insult. Victoria was forcing Sienna to dine with her husband's mistress on her wedding night. It was a power play designed to break Sienna's spirit completely. Waiters in white gloves moved silently, pouring vintage Dom Perignon. "So, Sienna," Chantel said, leaning forward. Her voice was like syrup laced with arsenic. "How does it feel to be a sterling? Quite a step up from the gallery, isn't it?" Sienna picked up her champagne flute. She swirled the bubbles, watching them rise. "It's certainly different, Chantel. The air is thinner up here, harder to breathe, or maybe that's just the smell of old secrets." Chantel's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Secrets? Oh, darling, every family has secrets. It's what keeps them interesting." "True," Sienna said, locking eyes with her. "But some secrets are expensive, don't you think?" Harrison laughed nervously, sensing the tension but missing the subtext. Now, let's not talk about money tonight. Tonight is about love." "To love," Victoria announced, raising her glass, "and to the future of the Sterling legacy." "To the legacy," Chantel echoed, clinking her glass against Harrison's a little too hard. Sienna didn't drink. Dinner was served, lobster thermidor and filet mignon. Sienna cut her meat into tiny, precise pieces, watching the room. She saw the looks the guests were exchanging. They knew. People like the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, the fictionalized heavy hitters of New York society. They always knew. They had seen Chantel and Harrison together in the Hamptons. They had seen the way Victoria doted on Chantel. They were whispering about Sienna, the poor, oblivious bride. They were laughing at her. Let them laugh, Sienna thought. They're just the audience. After dinner came the speeches. The best man, a college friend of Harrison's named Preston, gave a drunken, rambling speech about their days at Yale, making vague allusions to Harrison's conquests before he met Sienna. It was tasteful enough, but cringe-worthy. Then Victoria stood up. The room went silent instantly. Victoria Sterling commanded respect through fear. She walked to the microphone stand in the center of the dance floor. The spotlight hit her, making her diamonds blaze. "Good evening," Victoria purred. "When Harrison told me he wanted to marry, I must admit, I was concerned." A ripple of nervous laughter went through the crowd. "Marriage is not just about romance," Victoria continued, her eyes boring into Sienna. "It is a merger. It is a contract. It requires sacrifice. It requires knowing your role. Harrison is a sun. He burns bright. He leads. And a wife must be the gravity that holds him, silently, without complaint." She smiled a shark-like smile. "Sienna, welcome to the family. I hope you are ready for the weight of the name you now carry. It is a heavy burden, but don't worry. We will guide you. We will show you exactly what is expected of you." She raised her glass. "To my son. The future." "To the future!" The crowd roared. Victoria walked back to the table. As she sat down, she leaned over to Sienna and whispered, "Don't embarrass us on the dance floor. Keep your steps small." Sienna looked at her mother-in-law. "I wouldn't dream of it, Victoria. I have a speech to make first." Victoria frowned. "A speech? Brides don't give speeches, Sienna. It's not traditional. We're a modern couple, aren't we?" Sienna stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Harrison reached for her hand. "Sienna? What are you doing? You didn't tell me you were speaking." "It's a surprise, honey," Sienna said, pulling her hand away gently. "I just wanted to thank everyone." She walked toward the microphone. The room grew quiet again. This was unplanned. The guests sensed a shift in the atmosphere. The air felt charged, like the sky before a tornado touches down. Sienna stood in the center of the dance floor, alone. The spotlight was blinding. She tapped the microphone 3 times. Thump, thump, thump. It was the signal. In the back of the room, up in the AV booth, the technician Chloe had spoken to, a guy named Mike, who had been stiffed on his payment by Victoria Sterling 2 years prior, hit the Enter key. Behind Sienna, a massive 20-foot LED screen, which had been displaying a slideshow of childhood photos, went black. Sienna smiled at the crowd. "Thank you, everyone," she began, her voice steady and amplified, echoing off the vaulted ceilings. Victoria spoke so eloquently about secrets, about the weight of a name, about sacrifice. She paused. "I learned a lot about the Sterling family in the last few weeks. I learned that they are very generous people. Surprisingly generous." Harrison stood up at the head table. "Sienna." "Sit down, Harrison," Sienna said, her voice snapping like a whip. She didn't shout, but the authority in her tone froze him in place. "I wanted to share a special slideshow," Sienna said, gesturing to the screen behind her. "A tribute to the love that really made this wedding possible." The screen flickered to life. It wasn't a picture of Sienna and Harrison in Paris. It was a high-resolution scan of a bank document. The Victoria Sterling Revocable Trust. Beneficiary, Chantal Dubois. Amount, 5,000 $1,000. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. It sounded like a physical blow. $5 million, Sienna narrated calmly, pacing the stage. "Sent 3 weeks ago. Now, why would my loving mother-in-law send my husband's ex-girlfriend $5 million right before our wedding?" At the head table, Victoria's face went white. She clawed at the tablecloth. Chantal froze, her champagne glass halfway to her mouth. "I wondered that too," Sienna said. "So I dug a little deeper." The slide changed. It was the letter. The handwriting was unmistakably Victoria's. The words were blown up to 10-foot-tall letters. "The girl is dull, but she's manageable. Stay married for exactly 18 months to unlock your grandfather's trust fund. Chantal has agreed to wait." The silence in the room was shattered. People were standing up. Phones were coming out. Flashbulbs started popping. The real private names, the bankers, the lawyers, the socialites, were reading the text, their jaws dropping. This wasn't just gossip. This was a conspiracy to commit fraud against a trust fund, broadcasted live. "Clause 4A, Sienna read from the screen, turning to face Harrison, who looked like he was about to vomit. "Marital stability requirement. You didn't marry me for love, Harrison. You married me for an inheritance. I was just an 18-month rental." "Turn it off!" Victoria shrieked, jumping up and knocking her chair over. "Cut the power! Turn it off now!" "We're not done," Sienna said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Because, Chantal, I didn't want you to feel left out." The slide changed again. This time it was a video. It was grainy, taken from a security camera, but the audio was crystal clear. It showed Harrison and Chantal in the hotel room in Greenwich. They were on the bed. Harrison's voice boomed through the ballroom speakers. "I can't stand touching her, Chantal. She smells like cheap perfume. Once I get the money, I'm dumping her on the street, and we're buying the villa in Como." The ballroom erupted. It was total pandemonium. Sienna stood in the center of the storm, the white light haloing her. She looked at the head table. Harrison was slumped in his chair, head in his hands. Chantal was trying to cover her face with a napkin, but photographers were swarming her. Victoria was screaming at a security guard, pointing at the AV booth, but the guard was too busy watching the screen. Sienna looked at the camera recording the wedding video. She looked straight into the lens. "I hope the liquidity was worth it, Victoria," she said. Then, She dropped the microphone. It hit the floor with a deafening screech of feedback. But the story wasn't over. As the feedback faded, Harrison stood up. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He walked toward Sienna. His face wasn't angry. It was something else. The room went quiet, waiting for the violence, waiting for the explosion. Harrison stopped 3 feet from her. He picked up the microphone Sienna had dropped. He looked at his mother, then at Chantel, and finally at Sienna. He took a breath. "You missed one thing," he whispered into the mic. And that's when the real twist happened. The feedback from the dropped microphone still seemed to vibrate in the crystal glasses on the tables. 500 guests held their breath. Harrison Sterling stood 3 feet from Sienna. He looked at the massive LED screen behind her, the screen still frozen on the image of his face, twisted in a sneer, saying he couldn't stand touching her. Then he looked at his mother, Victoria, who was currently being restrained by her own brother from attacking the AV booth. Finally, he looked at Chantel, who was weeping into a linen napkin, her mascara running in black rivers down her face. He turned back to Sienna. He didn't look ashamed. He didn't look angry. He looked impressed. "You missed one thing," Harrison said, his voice amplified by the microphone he had picked up. It was calm, smooth, the voice of a man closing a deal. Sienna frowned, her adrenaline spiking. "I didn't miss anything, Harrison. The receipt, the letter, the video. It's all there. You're a fraud." "The evidence is real," Harrison admitted, shocking the crowd. "But the context. You missed the context, Sienna." He took a step closer. Sienna didn't back down. "You think I left that receipt in my jacket by accident?" Harrison asked softly. "I've been laundering money through shell companies since I was 22. I don't make mistakes with paper trails. I don't leave $5 million transfer slips in my pocket after a lunch meeting." Sienna's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" "I left it there," Harrison said, his voice rising so the back of the room could hear. "I put the letter in the pocket. I left the phone on the counter. I wanted you to find it." A murmur rippled through the room. Victoria stopped screaming and stared at her son. "Why?" Sienna whispered. "Because I couldn't stop her myself," Harrison said, gesturing to his mother with a look of pure venom. "Look at her. Victoria Sterling, the puppet master. She controls the trust. She controls the board. She controls who I date, where I live, what I eat. She set up this whole scheme with Chantel. She threatened to cut me off, to leave me with nothing if I didn't marry you and wait out the 18 months. He turned to the crowd, playing the victim with terrifying skill. "I was trapped," he shouted, throwing his arms wide. "I was being blackmailed by my own mother and my ex-girlfriend. Chantel?" He laughed darkly. "Chantel isn't a lover. She's a leech. She demanded that $5 million. She demanded I say those things on video to soothe her ego. I had to play the part. I had to pretend to hate you, Sienna, or they would have destroyed me." He looked back at Sienna, his eyes pleading, frantic. "But I couldn't go through with it. I couldn't trap you for 18 months. I needed you to be the one to blow it up. I needed you to expose them, because I couldn't do it without losing my inheritance. But if you found the fraud, if you exposed the breach of trust," Harrison smiled, a slow, chilling expression. "Clause 7B of grandfather's will," he said. "If the trustee, my mother, is found to be engaging in gross moral turpitude or fraudulent manipulation of the beneficiary's marital status, she is automatically removed. The trust vests immediately to me." The room gasped. Harrison had just checkmated his own mother. "You see?" Harrison said, reaching out to touch Sienna's arm. She flinched away. I didn't play you, Sienna. I partnered with you. I gave you the gun, and I knew you were smart enough to pull the trigger. We just took down the 2 women who were trying to control us. We won. The money is mine now, ours now. No 18-month wait, no Chantel, just us. He looked at her with a twisted expectation of gratitude. He actually thought she would be happy. He thought that because he was a billionaire and now free of his mother, Sienna would forgive the humiliation because she had won the game he set up. So, Harrison whispered into the mic, forgive the theatre, darling. It was necessary. Now let's finish the reception. Kick them out. We have a honeymoon to get to. The silence that followed was heavier than the one before. Victoria Sterling collapsed into her chair, looking old and defeated. Chantel was staring at Harrison with open horror, realizing she had been used as a pawn in a war between mother and son. Sienna looked at Harrison. She looked at the man she had loved, and she saw the truth. He wasn't a victim. He was worse than them. He was a sociopath who had engineered his own wife's public humiliation just to expedite a bank transfer. Sienna took the microphone from his hand. Her fingers were cold. Harrison, she said. Yes. He smiled, expecting a reconciliation. You think this makes it better? Sienna asked. You think telling me that you allowed me to think I was unloved, allowed me to think I was a fool, just so you could stage a coup against your mother, makes you the hero? Harrison's smile faltered. It makes us partners, Sienna. We are the same. We are survivors. We are nothing alike, Sienna said. Her voice didn't shake. You claim you left the receipt on purpose? Maybe you did. Maybe you didn't. It doesn't matter. Because here is the part you missed. She reached into her dress pocket and pulled out her phone. She held it up. I didn't just find the receipt, Sienna said. I found the prenup draft you saved on your private server. The one you wrote yourself, Harrison. Not your mother. You. Harrison's face went pale for the first time. I read the metadata, Sienna continued. You drafted the clause about spousal mental instability 3 days ago. You weren't planning on staying married for 18 months. You were planning to have me committed to a mental health facility in 6 months so you could take power of attorney and liquidate the assets early. The gasp from the crowd was audible. This was dark. This was criminal. You aren't a victim, Harrison, Sienna said, her voice ringing like a judgment bell. You're a predator, and I am not your partner. I am your executioner. She turned to the crowd. There is no wedding. The marriage license was never signed. I left it blank in the vestry. She threw the microphone at his feet. It hit his polished shoe with a thud. Enjoy your money, Harrison. You're going to need it for the lawyers. Sienna turned on her heel, grabbed the bottle of Dom Perignon from the head table, and walked out of the ballroom. As the double doors swung shut behind her, the chaos finally erupted. 72 hours later, the world had changed. The video of the wedding, leaked by 3 separate guests and the AV technician, had over 50 million views on YouTube. The hashtags Naoshan Sienna Sterling, Tire the Receipt, and Clause 7B were trending globally. The internet had crowned Sienna the saint of revenge. But in the high-rise conference room of Cravath, Swain and Moore in Midtown Manhattan, the mood was far from celebratory. Sienna sat at one end of a mahogany table, long enough to land a plane on. She was wearing a simple black suit, flanked by Reynolds, her rough-around-the-edges private investigator, and a high-powered divorce attorney named Jessica Pearson, whom she had hired on contingency. Opposite them sat the Sterling army. Victoria Sterling looked like a shadow of herself. She was wearing dark sunglasses indoors. Harrison sat next to her, looking exhausted and angry. They had a team of 6 lawyers in grey suits. "This is defamation per se." The lead Sterling lawyer, a man with a neck like a bulldog, barked. "You broadcasted private financial documents to a public audience. You recorded private conversations without consent. We are suing Ms. Kinsley for $50 million in damages for emotional distress and reputational harm." Jessica Pearson laughed. It was a dry, sharp sound. "Emotional distress? Your client plotted to defraud a trust and emotionally torture my client. The cheating video is admissible as evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud. And regarding the recording laws, New York is a one-party consent state. Sienna was a party to the conversation in her own home where the recordings were made. The video of Harrison and Chantel was in a hotel room," the lawyer countered. "Expectation of privacy." "That video," Sienna spoke up, her voice calm, "was sent to me anonymously. I didn't record it. I just played it. You can't sue me for publishing material sent to a tip line." Harrison slammed his hand on the table. "Stop it. Enough with the legal gymnastics. Sienna, what do you want? You want a settlement? Fine. Name your price. 5 million? 10. Just sign the NDA and retract the statements." Victoria stayed silent, staring at the table. Her reign was over. The board of directors of Sterling Shipping had already called for an emergency meeting to discuss her removal. Harrison's Clause 7B gambit had worked. She was out, but because of the public scandal, the stock had tanked 14% in 2 days. The fortune Harrison had fought for was bleeding out. "I don't want your money, Harrison," Sienna said. "I have my own job. I have my own life." "Then what are we doing here?" Harrison snapped. "You destroyed my family. You destroyed the company's reputation. Are you just here to gloat?" "I'm here to negotiate the terms of your surrender," Sienna said. She signaled to Reynolds. The PI slid a thick manila envelope across the table. It stopped directly in front of Victoria. "What is this?" Victoria asked, her voice raspy. "While I was looking for the affair," Sienna said, "I found something else in the family servers. It turns out you didn't just launder money to Chantel. You've been using the charitable foundation, the Sterling Hope Initiative, to evade taxes on international shipments for 10 years. The lawyers on the other side of the table stiffened. This wasn't tabloid drama. This was federal prison. "I have the ledgers," Sienna continued. "I have the emails between you and the Cayman bankers. I have it all." Harrison looked at the envelope, then at his mother. You used the charity." "Shut up, Harrison," Victoria hissed. Sienna leaned forward. "Here is the deal. I don't sign an NDA. I don't retract anything. The story stays up. But I won't send this envelope to the IRS." "In exchange for what?" the bulldog lawyer asked, sweating now. 1, Sienna counted on her finger. "Harrison publicly admits that the marriage was a sham, and annulment is granted immediately on grounds of fraud. No irreconcilable differences. Fraud." "Done," Harrison said quickly. He wanted to distance himself from the wreckage. 2, Sienna continued. "The Sterling Shipping Company will make a donation of $10 million, legitimately this time, to a domestic abuse shelter of my choosing, and I want the receipt posted on your social media." Victoria looked like she had swallowed a lemon. 10 million was a lot, even for them, especially with the stock crash. "And 3, Sienna said, looking directly at Chantel, who was sitting in the back of the room, looking small and terrified. Chantel had been dragged here as a witness. "Chantel leaves New York," Sienna said. "I don't care where she goes. Paris, Dubai, hell. But if I see her face in this city again, I release the tax files." Chantel nodded vigorously, tears streaming down her face. "And for you, Harrison?" Sienna looked at her ex-fiancé. Harrison straightened his tie. "What do you want from me? My blood?" "No," Sienna said, standing up. "I want you to stay exactly where you are. You have the money now. You have the company. You got exactly what you wanted. But you have no mother to guide you, no wife to support you, and the whole world knows you're a sociopath. You're the king of a pile of ash." She picked up her purse. "I want you to be alone. That's your punishment." Sienna turned to her lawyer. "Draft the papers. If they don't sign by noon, mail the envelope to the DOJ." She walked out of the conference room. Harrison sat in the silence of the boardroom, the buzzing of the fluorescent lights the only sound. He looked at the billions of dollars of potential lawsuits on the table, the ruined reputation of his mother, and the empty chair where Sienna had sat. He had won the trust fund, but for the first time in his life, he realized just how expensive the victory was. 1 year later, the rain in Chelsea didn't smell like the rain on the Upper East Side. Up there, on Fifth Avenue, rain smelled like wet doormats and chauffeured car exhaust. Here, on West 27th Street, it smelled like wet concrete, espresso, and ambition. Sienna Kinsley stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of Kinsley Contemporary, watching the autumn drizzle slick the cobblestones outside. It had been exactly 365 days, a full rotation of the sun since she had stood in the ballroom of the Pierre Hotel, wearing a dress that cost more than a car and burned her life to the ground. Inside the gallery, the air was warm and humming with life. This wasn't the hushed, terrified silence of a Sterling cocktail party, where laughter was measured in decibels and checking your watch was a mortal sin. This was a roar. It was the opening night of The Unveiling, Sienna's debut exhibition as an independent owner, and the space was packed. There were artists with paint under their fingernails, critics with sharp glasses, and locals who just wanted a free glass of wine. It was chaotic. It was real. Sienna turned away from the window and scanned the room. She caught her reflection in the glass of a framed photograph. The woman staring back was a stranger to the girl who had walked down that aisle. That girl had worn her hair in long, perfectly curled waves, weighed down by extensions and hairspray. The woman in the reflection wore a sharp, asymmetrical bob that exposed her neck. She wore a tailored black blazer, vintage denim, and boots. She looked tired, yes, the exhaustion of hanging 50 canvases in 48 hours, but her eyes were clear. The shadows that had lived under them during her engagement to Harrison were gone. "It looks like a car crash, but in a good way." Sienna turned to find a man standing behind her, staring at the centerpiece of the room, a sculpture made of twisted, jagged automotive steel and reclaimed stained glass. It was Reynolds. The private investigator looked comically out of place amidst the gallery crowd. He was wearing the same rumpled beige trench coat he had worn the day he handed Sienna the manila envelope in the law firm. He held a flute of expensive champagne like it was a grenade he was waiting to throw. "Reynolds," Sienna smiled, a genuine expression that reached her eyes. "I didn't think you were the art appreciation type. I appreciate anything that doesn't involve digging through trash cans or cloning SIM cards," Reynolds grunted, taking a tentative sip of the champagne. He grimaced, clearly preferring cheap bourbon, but swallowed it anyway. "You've done good, kid. The place, it has an energy." "It's mine," Sienna said simply. "That's the energy. No trustees, no board of directors. Just me and the bank loan." "Well, it's working." Reynolds gestured around the room. "I see a lot of red dots on the wall labels. Your moving product." "We sold the centerpiece 10 minutes ago," Sienna said, looking back at the sculpture, "to a collector from Berlin. He said it reminded him of reconstruction after disaster. I thought that was fitting." Reynolds chuckled, a gravelly sound. Reconstruction. Is that what we're calling it? He moved closer, lowering his voice so the nearby group of art students wouldn't hear. The air between them shifted from celebratory to conspiratorial. Reynolds was the only person in this room who knew the full extent of the wreckage. He was the one who had found the bodies, metaphorically speaking. I actually came by to give you a little present, Reynolds said. Consider it a 1-year anniversary gift. I don't need gifts, Reynolds. Your bill was high enough, Sienna teased. Information, Reynolds corrected. Free of charge. I thought you might want an update on the subjects of our previous investigation, since you stopped reading the tabloids. Sienna hesitated. For the last 6 months, she had aggressively filtered her life. She had blocked certain keywords on her phone. She didn't read page 6. She didn't check the stock market. She had successfully created a bubble where the name Sterling didn't exist. Do I want to know? She asked. You need to know, Reynolds said, to close the book. He took a step closer, turning his back to the room. Let's start with the Queen Mother, Victoria. Sienna felt a phantom chill, a reflex from months of psychological conditioning. Where is she? Connecticut, Reynolds said, savouring the word like a punchline. A serviced apartment in Greenwich. Not the estate. They had to liquidate that to cover the legal fees and the settlement with the IRS. She's living in a 2-bedroom condo. I heard from a source that she tried to get a table at Le Bernardin last month when she was in the city. The maitre d' told her they were fully booked. The restaurant was empty. Sienna blinked. Victoria Sterling, who used to have mayors and senators on speed dial, rejected by a maitre d'. She must be furious. She's worse than furious. She's irrelevant, Reynolds said. That's the thing about people like Victoria. They can survive hatred. They thrive on fear. But indifference, being ignored, it's killing her faster than any disease. She's a ghost, Sienna. She walks around that condo screaming at cleaning staff because she has no one else left to command. And Harrison? Sienna asked. The name felt heavy on her tongue, like a stone. Reynolds' expression darkened slightly. Harrison is complicated. He won the war, right? He got the trust fund. He got the company. But he's finding out that the crown is made of lead. The hostile takeover? It's a bloodbath, Reynolds nodded. The board smells weakness. Since the scandal, the stock has been in freefall, down 40% year to date. Harrison is paranoid. He thinks everyone is wearing a wire. My old contacts in his security detail tell me he fired his CFO last week because the guy looked at him wrong during a meeting. He's alone in that glass penthouse, Sienna. He has the money, sure, but he spends his days with lawyers and his nights with a bottle of scotch. He looks 10 years older. And Chantel? Married a used car dealership owner in Miami. Reynolds laughed. Small time. She keeps her head down. She's terrified you have more dirt on her. Every time she sees a camera, she flinches. Sienna looked down at her hands. They were steady. A year ago, hearing this would have filled her with a vindictive, fiery joy. She would have wanted to toast to their misery. But now, standing in her own gallery, surrounded by her own achievements, she felt nothing. It wasn't forgiveness, it was apathy. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. They were just characters in a book she had finished reading and put back on the shelf. I don't care, Sienna realized aloud. She looked at Reynolds. It's strange. I thought I would be happy to hear they were suffering, but I don't care. Reynolds smiled, a proud, crooked grin. That's how you know you really won, kid. The moment you stop checking the scoreboard. He finished his champagne in one gulp. I'm going to buy that little painting in the corner. The angry-looking abstract one. Reminds me of my ex-wife. Put it on my tab. You got it, Sienna laughed. Reynolds disappeared into the crowd, heading toward the sales desk. Sienna turned back to the window, watching the rain intensify. The city lights were blurring into streaks of gold and red. Buzz. The vibration against her thigh was sharp. Sienna reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out her phone. She expected a text from her assistant about wine supplies, or maybe a congratulatory message from a friend. The name on the screen stopped her heart for a fraction of a second. Harrison. She hadn't blocked him. She hadn't felt the need to. He hadn't tried to contact her in 11 months. She slid her thumb across the screen to open the message. Harrison. I saw the write-up about the gallery in the Times today. The critic called you a visionary. He's right. You always were. The penthouse is so quiet tonight, Sienna. It's deafening. I made a mistake. 1,000 mistakes. Can we just talk? 5 minutes. I just need to hear a real voice. Sienna stared at the words. She could picture him. She could see him sitting on that Italian leather sofa, the one she had helped pick out, surrounded by the panoramic views of a city that was slowly eating him alive. She could imagine the silence of that apartment, a silence bought with treachery and lies. He was reaching out. He was drowning, and he was looking for the only life raft he had ever truly known but failed to recognize. A year ago, this text would have been a victory. A year ago, she might have replied with a biting insult, or maybe, in a moment of weakness, she might have felt a pang of longing for the man she thought he was. But tonight, she looked at the sculpture of twisted metal, reconstruction. She didn't feel anger. She didn't feel sadness. She felt like she was looking at a spam email offering her a discount on car insurance. It was just noise. Sienna didn't type a reply. She didn't take a screenshot to send to Reynolds. She didn't craft a witty comeback. She simply swiped her thumb to the left. Delete conversation? She tapped. Yes. The message vanished. The thread vanished. The digital footprint of Harrison Sterling was wiped clean from her life, leaving nothing but white space. Sienna slipped the phone back into her pocket. Sienna! Her assistant, a bright-eyed art student named Chloe, ironically the same name as the makeup artist from the wedding, waved from across the room. The collector from Berlin wants to meet you. He's asking about the inspiration for the show. Sienna smiled. She straightened her blazer, took a deep breath of the gallery air, smelling of rain, paint, and freedom, and walked away from the window. I'm coming, she called out. She stepped into the crowd, the laughter and music swallowing her up, leaving the darkness of the street and the ghosts of the past firmly outside the glass. And just like that, the Sterling dynasty didn't end with a bang, or a lawsuit, or a scream. It ended with a deleted text message in a crowded room in Chelsea. It is a brutal, beautiful reminder of how the world actually works. You can have billions in offshore accounts. You can have the Park Avenue address. You can win the hostel takeover and crush your enemies. But if you build your empire on a foundation of lies, all it takes is one person with the truth and the receipts to bring it all crashing down. Harrison got his money. He got the trust fund he was so desperate for. But he lost his peace. He lost his family. And tonight, he sits alone in a glass tower, realizing that the most expensive things in life are the ones you can't buy. Sienna lost the billionaire lifestyle. She lost the diamonds and the private jets. But she gained her dignity. She gained her freedom. And looking at her now, standing in her own gallery, I think we all know who really won the war. Now, I have to turn this over to you guys because the comment section is going to be wild on this one. I want to know. What would you have done in Sienna's shoes? When that settlement offer was on the table, would you have taken the money and run? Or would you have done exactly what she did, burn it all to the ground just to make a point about self-respect? And be honest with me, when Harrison sent that text at the end, did any part of you feel sorry for him? Did he deserve a second chance, or is he getting exactly the karma he ordered? Let me know your thoughts down below. I read every single one, and I really want to see the debate on this. If you enjoyed this story of revenge, justice, and high society chaos, please do me a huge favor and smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow and helps us bring you more stories like this. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss a drama. We drop new stories every Tuesday and Friday. Until next time, keep your standards high and keep your receipts. Until next time, keep your receipts